Hi, this is Randy Rolfe from the Institute for Creative Solutions, sharing foundational concepts about vibrant health through natural living. And I want in the next couple of episodes to go through some key core concepts, because a lot of people are home with their families now, and maybe children, maybe parents, and all eating together and trying to make things work. And I want to go through some really foundational concepts. So the first one today is about whole foods. What is a whole food? And, of course, there's a giant chain run by Amazon that's called Whole Foods, and their idea is that they try to use whole foods. It really came into favor when we started realizing that when you refine starches and grains, particularly wheat, and just use the starch part, you leave the good oils, which is and the wheat germ, and which is where the protein is, and a lot of the vitamins and minerals, the B vitamins that are in the natural wheat grain, but are lost when you just use the starch. Now that makes light, fluffy bread because starch ferments very easily once you add some yeast, but it's not whole. You're missing out on what nature intended to have with starch. It's impossible to find starch in nature that doesn't have some oils and some proteins and some vitamins and minerals. So whole foods is where you're getting the whole food. Now, of course, there's foods where we can't eat the whole food. We don't eat the feathers of a bird, for instance, and we avoid the sprouts of potatoes for historical reasons. But the whole is to get the covering, which is often a lot of good fiber too. Like on a potato, the potato skins have a lot of the vitamin C and good fiber and other minerals in there. So you want to get the whole food. So the basic idea of whole food is to take whatever comes from nature and eat as much of it as we can safely eat. Now, we've been cooking our food for several 100,000 years, so we have been evolving, developing with these cooked foods. So it's all right. You don't have to eat everything raw, but there's some foods that are best eaten raw, like fruits and salad vegetables, but then others are better cooked. They're safer. We're getting rid of microbes that develop in fresh meat, for instance, very quickly. So we cook it so we can keep it for a couple of days or eat it safely. But the whole food, like in America, we don't eat the whole animal at all. Most cultures traditionally have eaten the innards of the animal as well as the skins, and we're all afraid of skin now from our turkey because it has some fat, but it's a healthy fat if it's a healthy turkey, so there's no real problem. So real turkey, a real whole turkey would be, you get that crusty skin, which I love, and it's very, very tasty. And you would eat the brown as well as the white, and then you would boil the bones. And there's been a very popular book about bone broth, and I always boil the bones of my birds when I cook them so that we get the minerals and the proteins from the bones and the marrow of the bird bones, and it's a great source of the minerals that help keep us healthy. So the whole food idea is everything that's edible, and then prepare it in a way that is traditional in that particular cuisine. Because if you depart from the traditions that have worked in the past for humans, you may be missing something. Over the generations, different people find ways to bring out the best nutrition in a food. Like the American Indians, when they cooked corn, they always added some minerals to it. And that helped prevent a disease which developed in the slave communities in the Old South because they didn't do that. They didn't cook corn the usual way, and there were some serious deficiencies, and it was a disaster and horrible, of course. Even more horrible that it went through the slave populations, the pellagra disease. But they eventually figured out it was because they were trying to feed them as cheaply as possible on corn starch, and it just didn't do the trick. It didn't keep them strong and healthy. So they couldn't even do the work that was demanded of them inappropriately, of course. So, so there's all kinds of history about why whole foods are best. Like during World War II, there was less diabetes and there was less heart disease than there had been before, because the companies that were refining the grains in to make fluffy bread and fluffy pizza dough and fluffy bagels were changed over to wartime production, and so people were eating whole grain bread. And it was demonstrated in studies in Denmark that there were many fewer degenerative diseases when people were eating the whole wheat bread. So that's what whole is about. And if you like radishes, you can not just eat the red, you can also eat the leaves. Same with carrots. You can chop up the greens and put them in your salad. That people throughout history have eaten those greens. We just don't in America. So try and think in terms of eating the whole food. And another favorite is eggs. We got all scared that there was fat in the yolks of eggs. Well, it's the healthiest fat you can get as long as your eggs haven't been sitting there for a month. And the proteins are so good. And we know that the yolks have, the whites have proteins in them as well, but it's not in as good a complete spectrum as in the yolks. And the yolks also have a substance, lecithin, which helps the body deal with the cholesterol that's in the eggs. And if they're fresh eggs, the cholesterol is not a problem anymore at all, because it's way less than the liver produces every day to help with digestion. So the whole egg is better. But of course, we don't use the shell in this country. But you can add it to a soup and get a whole lot of minerals out of it and just fish it out if it doesn't totally dissolve. So think about whole foods and try to include them in your diet, and you're more likely to get natural sources of the minerals and some of the vitamins that are hard to find, and lots of other things that are just discovering how important they are, different amino acids among the proteins, and the fiber that's so important to keep digestion moving, and live enzymes. So even like the lining of the orange skin has a lot of the coenzymes that work with vitamin C to make it even more effective in the body. So you can actually, it tastes pretty good if you chew the inside of an orange peel, or use an orange peel. Just peel the orange after you've washed it, of course, and make sure it's organic so it's not sprayed. But you know, put a twist of orange or lemon in your salad or in a drink, and so on. So, or just blend it in your favorite smoothie. And it adds a little bite to it, which is very nice. So try really hard to think in terms of whole foods, and there's a whole lot less waste and a whole lot more of the micronutrients get into your nutrition and your bodybuilding. So that's it on whole foods for today.